I wanted to talk to you about the legislation and the election integrity bill you guys passed a couple of months ago, where you attached it to the budget.
Yeah, it was kind of part of the budget negotiations, a separate bill, but yes, part of the overall package to make sure that we were able to prevent future private election grants moving forward. And part of that negotiation was also including additional dollars in the budget that would go to counties to help cover the cost of elections.
Got it. So there was two parts. One was the funding that helped to get rid of the Zuckerbucks, and then the other was, as I recall, prevents Board of Elections from stopping a count once it's started.
Well,
so could you tell me?
The 2020 election carried an enormous amount of controversy, and also, some unprecedented things happened. From the private election grant here in Pennsylvania, we learned more and more following the election that there was outreach done to certain counties in advance through right to know requests from investigative reporters, that a select 5 counties received monies in advance before anybody even knew of the program. And those counties were, I want to say it was 83% of those dollars. And they voted for one particular candidate. In this situation, it was for current President Biden. So the practice of private dollars being able to really dictate and prescribe, even to the level of detail, the number of polling stations. These dollars were used also in advance to do what would be considered early voting, where there would be pop-up stations paid for through this money, where people registered to vote and voted all at the same time, which really raises a lot of questions about, was that a lawful voter? Was that voter maybe registered someplace else? And nobody really knows, because counties have been blocking any post-election audit. So the other thing that you mentioned in the question about the count, because we did see counts were heading in one direction, and then simultaneously major urban areas stopped counting. In Philadelphia and in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh area, they closed their counting, they reopened up, and then there were massive changes in the actual vote count and results. So I think the goal was to try to really help all voters to have return some reliability in the election process and in the results process. We also passed 2 constitutional amendments, the first step, which are really significant in Pennsylvania. Because when we talk about our election integrity, the refusal of counties to open themselves up to third-party review or independent review is, it's a very concerning thing, because the fox is watching the hen house. Mm-hmm. And so having constitutional amendments that the voters will decide if voter ID is required to vote, and also if counties should be required to participate in election audits themselves. And to me, both of those issues are and will continue to have bipartisan support. And here in Pennsylvania, in 2019, it was a Democrat auditor that attempted to verify voters in the SURE system. And the SURE system is like our state voter database, and was refused to allow registered voters to be confirmed as being lawful and on the books in the same counties that got advance money before the elections. So we have the Zuckerbucks, we have early voting, we have refusal to audit, and all of those things were able to be addressed, this past year, at least incrementally.
Just to get back to one of the things I found interesting is, I think Pennsylvania is the only state with a Democratic governor that actually got anything like this passed. And on your bill, I know you had some Republicans that I would have expected to support it, didn't support it, and yet you brought in other Democrats that supported it. I specifically, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Seth Grove did support it or voted against it, but then Mary Jo Daley did vote for it. So how did that horse play and that horse trading work out that you managed to get it through?
Yeah. And it was significant, at anything that I guess the goal was, we were able to get it across the finish line. What a number of people in our caucus, and we weren't sure if we were going to have enough votes to actually get it implemented because, I was wanting more. Our caucus was wanting more. The original version had what I felt were significantly improved checks and balances that would come with the receiving of these election dollars. And in order to get it across the governor's desk so he didn't veto it, similar to what he had done with a larger election reform bill, we lost some of those items that we wanted in there. So we did get the block the private money. We did get constitutional amendment pathways for audits and ID, but we didn't get at that same immediate time as much control and transparency as we would have liked.
Yeah, which reminds me, it's what Phyllis Schlafly used to always say: you take what you can get, and then you fight for the rest later.
And it's tough. It's a really tough vote because if we would have had a swing and a miss, knowing, and in caucus, we had a pretty heated debate over the final version of this bill. And I shared with members, through national election integrity groups that I've been working with, there are billions of dollars now out there and available in these private funds. And this may not be perfect, but if we don't close the door on the private money, we're going to see greater shenanigans and new ways of people using dollars they weren't suppressing the vote, they were hyper extracting the vote in areas where they wanted a higher particular turnout of a party. So I think the concept was also in the Senate. I have to give credit to Senator Ward, who really, she fought hard to keep the Zuckerbuck issue in play in budget negotiations. And the Senate, from a bipartisan side, the hearing we had with the Senate and dialogue with some Democratic senators, they did share the concern that private contracts could really be used to maybe influence some outcomes, in the process. And so credit really goes to a lot of people for us to be able to get something across the finish line. It's not perfect, as you alluded to. There's still more work to be done, but it was a massive accomplishment, and I think a solid step towards improving election integrity.
Yeah. So, but I still want to go back to how did you manage to get those Democrats on board that you needed to pass it, and then how did you manage to get Wolf to sign it in the end?
Well, I think it was definitely a group effort, and I think I'm a bipartisan person, and we're talking to a lot of people and have been for a couple of years on both sides of the aisle about the concern, and just giving the example of, well, imagine if the NRA spent just $2 million in Westmoreland County and had drive around vote collection for every registered gun owner that they have in the county, and what impact that would have moving forward.
So you basically told them, listen, yeah, I know you played the game last time, but what's to stop somebody else from playing it the next time?
Yes, and I said, so imagine a energy company where a number of my colleagues from across the aisle might have concerns. I said, it's not going to be Facebook this next time. I said, instead of using legislation. I said, and it may not be in a state or a national race. I said, it could be in a commissioner's race where you could have an energy company come in and set up their own parameters to influence the outcome for commissioners in order to achieve a given vote for a power plant, a landfill, a pipeline. And, we have to be very conscious that Pandora's box is open. And if we don't close it, there are going to be a lot of other avenues that are going to be expanded. And I think we were fortunate with that. And again, I felt that the Senate and Senator Ward, she's, the leader in the Senate, and my senator in Westmoreland County, she did a great job of really keeping the heat on, so that it oftentimes in politics, if it's real controversial, they'll kind of just set it aside and let it cool. And, so credit goes to the actions in our sister chamber for both keeping it alive and keeping it front and center.
That's great. So, and just to wrap up, so if you're going to give advice to legislators in other states that were looking to push legislation like this through, what would you say to them? Where to start?
I'd say the first step is offense. We need offense, and incremental offense is a way that we can move the issue forward. And, I believe the best way to score a run is you got to get on base, right? And it's those singles, those small hits, to be able to accomplish a greater task. And I'm a big believer of trying to be as bipartisan as we can, because a lot of these issues impact and are concerning to people on both sides of the aisle. So I know I do get heat for being bipartisan and having relationships from people from both sides, but I think no matter what state you're in, incremental offense, fact-based relationships is the key to be able to move some of our initiatives forward.
Great. Are there any other points you want to hit on this?
I guess maybe the work isn't done. We're by no means, with what we were able to accomplish with the budget and even what we have coming in some constitutional amendments, there is a massive amount of work yet to be done. And so we have to realize that it's not over. We did get some big wins, but there's a long path ahead of us. And I think really getting into and tackling some of this, even, we stopped the third-party election grants. We have not stopped third-party recruiting and uploads of registered voters. And that is it's a big concern part. And what I mean by third-party recruiting, entities like Rock the Vote and a number of other politically motivated entities are currently under contract to register voters, and then they send batches of voters to the Department of State, who uploads them into the county voter rolls. But they're not verified. There's a box that you can check and say, I don't have my social security number. I don't have my driver's license number. And it's the county's responsibility to then determine if they're a lawful voter or not. But because counties are the only ones who audit themselves, those county offices know if anybody else is going to look and determine if that voter is getting there. So I think it is it's something that we have to talk more about and let people realize, thousands of voters can be potentially uploaded into a system, and it's only the county that has the ability to vet or just pass them through and then send them forward. So it's a very concerning flaw, I feel, that's in Pennsylvania's system. And it's my understanding, Rock the Vote is a national entity, and they're doing this throughout the nation. They're not the only ones, but they're probably the biggest name.
Wow. That is, I've heard about that, and we've seen in Philadelphia last election there was a surge of, what was it, it was 50 or 60,000 voters in the last 2 weeks. And then after the election, an equal number of voters was purged out of the Philadelphia system. So I know, you know, saying that there was fraud could get you in trouble these days, but boy, there's a lot out there that makes you scratch your head and saying, is this really right? Because let's be honest, if people don't have confidence in the election system, whether their fears are valid or not, it's not a good sign for democracy.
And I think also, you know, there is a political control element at play here. The parties that benefit from getting voters, lawful voters, to turn away and get frustrated and say, I'm not going to vote anymore because I don't trust that the system is as reliable as it should be. Like, they're winning. We allow the people who are manipulating the system to win if we disengage. And so I try to tell as many voters as I can, all of us need to stay active, continue to vote, and spread the word to others, because only through voting are we going to be able to keep the pressure on to implement that change. You know, so folding our arms and, you know, turning our backs to be active in the political process, that is probably, you know, we have to be aware that the worst thing we can do is disengage and say, I'm just not going to do it anymore, because we're giving up. And when we give up on elections, we are giving up on the Constitution, on our form of government, because it really does come down to every lawful voter has a say. And that's why I think what you're doing is so important, because we have to let people know that good things are happening and there's a lot more work. So we need their help.
Great. Well, listen, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And I know I said I would keep it under 25 minutes, so we're just about there.